it's been all this time, and you haven't lived without it. You are shining, shining. It seems though that your life you find it. No, but you'll never, no, you'll never see the rain. No, but you'll never, no, you'll never see. And it gets you down, but that's okay. You've been pushed round, you feel the pain. And when you fall, just lean on me, 'cause you've never known, never seen, never smelled, never felt the rain, never felt the rain.
A lot of the time the press release will have exclusive quotes from the client that you're pitching for, or they'll have, you know, exact information that has been approved by that client. And sometimes people want to go back to the actual source of that press release. So I know that there are some media sites out there that will literally copy and paste it. Sometimes it's useful, but definitely for a brand like Cosmo, we would never do that. And the main reason is I am 90% sure that the press release you're going to send me is not going to be said in a Cosmo tone of voice. And it's so important for our brand that the editors are taking the bits of information that we need, the facts that we need, and then writing it in a way that our readers are going to respond to, which is always really fun at Cosmo because we get to use loads of abbreviations and emojis, and that's always fun.
Amazing. So then it should be more of kind of like could it be bullet pointed just with like the key information?
I'm not opposed to bullet points, you know, because, and we said this on our call the other day, but I receive, I don't even know, I probably get about 300 emails a day, and half of them I imagine are probably press releases. So the amount of time that I'm not going to spend my entire day sifting through 100 odd press releases. And I would really love the who, what, where, when, why to literally be in that first paragraph. Like I know immediately if it's going to work for us or not. So for that reason, I mean, bullet points, I think they look a little bit lazy, but I think writing a press release, bullet points is a good place to start, and then just format it slightly so that your paragraph is almost worded like bullet points, but it you know, it comes across a bit more professional.
Okay, perfect. That's really good insight. And what was that again? So what, who, where, when, why?
The who, what, where, when, why, how.
Okay, perfect.
Because I do get, especially for sort of fragrance brands that like to kind of paint a story and tell a story of their product before they actually get into the information, which is great. However, sometimes you'll end up reading a full A4 page of, you know, characterization of sand and roses, and you're like, okay, but just tell me what the price is. Mm-hmm. If it's available now, is there an embargo on it? Like, you should have put that stuff at the beginning of the press release.
Okay, so this leads me kind of perfectly onto my next question for you then. So what other bits should be included in a press release? Because a lot of the time we kind of wreck our brains in how we can get everything across, because there's that kind of, you know, common thing of like, journalists don't have time. Give them everything you need right away and make their lives easier. But then at the same time, by doing that, you kind of do fall into the trap of making it a bit lengthier and a bit wordier. So what would you say are the other key bits? Is it images? Is it videos? Is it other coverage? Like, what would you want to see?
So I would say number one is don't send a WeTransfer link, please. Either, and I know that obviously if you're sending high-res images, you're not going to attach them in the body of an email, but maybe you could send smaller, you know, 50 KB size images, just so I can click on a thumbnail and just see straight away the visuals. Because if you're then giving one more step where it's a WeTransfer link, you're downloading, you're waiting for it, you have to unzip the folder, etc. Even a Dropbox link is way better, but I just highly advise against WeTransfer links. Now I've just gone in my whole head about WeTransfer links and I've forgotten the other stuff.
What else should you include?
So I would also try and recommend, if you can, try and, I mean, I guess this depends on the PR agency, but targeting your newsletters. So for example, yes, you might be sending out, I don't know, a fashion blast, but Cosmo wouldn't really be covering, an exclusive couture piece, for example, but maybe there is something from that story that we would cover. So maybe there was, a young millennial Gen Z girl who was involved in the production of this couture garment. And someone like Harper's Bazaar would probably cover more of it from the fashion side, and someone like Cosmo might cover it from more of the, from more of a kind of person side. So I would say try and pick out the bits that you think are going to work for each editor. Obviously, if you're sending a blast, that's not going to work if you're emailing like every editor in your list. But if you kind of have your dream list in mind of where you really see this press release going, take that bit of extra time to pitch a little bit more meticulously to that editor.
Okay, perfect. And this is definitely not on the list of questions, so I'm going off script here. But it's more about who to contact. So, at Monumental, we just have lists and lists and lists of anyone that possibly ever touched a pen in any a keyboard in any newspaper. But there's always the question of like, do we contact further up, but then there's less likely we'll get a response, or do you contact further down where you can have more of a conversation? I mean, realistically, who is it that decides, yes, this is press-worthy?
Well, okay, so we have very small teams in publishing in the UAE, just because the UAE is very small. And I know Cosmo in the UK have a much larger team. So again, I would find your fashion editors on that team, and I would probably contact, if there's 3 fashion editors, I'd probably send the press release to 2 of them. One of them might miss it, they might not be in the office. Maybe send it to all of them. I mean, it's good to kind of keep everyone in the loop, and the only thing they're going to do is they're also going to be communicating with each other about how it's going to work, who's going to do the work, etc. And in terms of higher up, I would maybe go for the section editor. So, your fashion editor, your beauty editor, as well as your kind of fashion writer, and maybe junior fashion assistant. Because if you're always going to, the trouble that we have here is that the teams are so small, so pretty much everything comes to me, and that is when things start getting lost. Or I have a fashion assistant who works obviously solely on fashion, and I always send fashion emails her way, try and encourage PRs to send them directly to her, because that's what she's got an eye for. So yeah, I think just be really mindful of which section you're sending it to. Maybe do loop in someone higher if you have, you haven't got a response and it is something that you really, really, truly believe is going to work for that publisher. But don't just do it because you haven't got a response. So you just think you need to loop in as many people as possible.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point around sending it to multiple people at the same level, because I think that's always one of those things like, do we send it to everyone, or do you just pick one and hope that they will get back to you? Because I mean, to be honest, my experience with Cosmo, it's all good, don't worry, was with the features director in London. And with her, I feel like her job is so grand that she definitely does not care about my releases. The only time me and her had a proper conversation was she wanted me to go on a date with my ex and to film the experience. And I nearly did it. To be covered in Cosmo.
And I mean, a lot of the time PRs and editors or writers will have personal relationships as well. So it is always good to cultivate those close relationships, so that you do have someone that is going to read your press release. Because I think another thing people tend to do sometimes is when they keep sending out email blasts, and if I see a PR's name who I know sends me business releases all the time, you kind of get into the habit of just ignoring emails from that person when they come through, and I might eventually then miss something. Whereas if you do have personal relationships with PRs or editors, I will notice the name, I'll go, oh, look, it's Jamie. Let's see what he's got to say.
Okay, fabulous. You heard it here first, guys. So if you want to go in Cosmo in the Middle East, now Millie will look out for my name. One thing that we did discuss on our call the other day was also, where is the line between PRs and editors? And I feel like that's something you felt really strongly about. Because I think in our industry, it's like be everyone's best friend, and that creates opportunities. But you felt a little bit differently about that. So do you want to maybe expand on that?
Okay, I do agree with you to some extent before I start sounding like or whatever. But yeah, no, I do agree with you to some extent, and I do think it works both ways as well. I mean, for example, we had a shoot today that was pulled together very last minute, and trying to pull an entire crew, hair, makeup, stylists, everything. You do, from my side as well, you do need to kind of be friends with everyone, because you need to be able to reach out to those PRs and say, can we barter a makeup artist today? And, it kind of works. So it works both ways. However, yes, I do think there is a line. And I think the line loves to get crossed out here, because mobile numbers are circulated like wildfire here, and it's considered really normal and in fact encouraged for PRs to contact you all the time on your personal number. So I will get sent press releases via WhatsApp and voice notes sometimes before they even come to me on email. And or even Insta DM, that's really started to be something that picks up. And I just think that I don't find this a professional stream of communication. And I don't know whether it's because you think we're too friendly, or because you think this is the best way of reaching me, because maybe you think I'm only always on Instagram and not on email. But it doesn't do you any favors to kind of cross that line. And every time someone if they'll pitch something to me over voice note, I'll just reply one line. I'll just say, please send it to me on email. So yeah, I think respect the boundary, definitely be friendly. And, some of my best friends are PRs as well. So sometimes they are personal relationships anyway. But yeah, be careful of that line, because you don't want to cross it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that might also be like a regional thing though, because I mean, even with my clients in the Middle East, they think it's really cool to like WhatsApp me on a Saturday night at midnight. Like I've literally closed deals over WhatsApp previously, only with Arab and Asian clients. Because I think if I did that in the UK, they'd think I'm insane.
It's such a cultural thing, and we do have a lot of people that come over from the UK to work in Dubai and work at ITP and Cosmo, ITP specifically, and they'll say to me on their first week on the job, is it normal for people to be ringing my personal mobile number, even though my e-signature has my office phone? We've just started communicating on email, and as soon as I've sent one email, they're calling my personal number at all hours of the day, like you said. And I do get that we are in an extremely fast-paced industry, and sometimes WhatsApp is faster if you're dealing with things like exclusives and, like breaking news. Sometimes, I get it. WhatsApp is the way to do it. But to just be ringing and voice noting willy-nilly, just, did you get my press release? Like, don't do that, because imagine if every PR who had sent a press release rang. I would spend my whole day on the phone.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, when you put it that way, it does make sense. So PRs out there watching this, do keep that in mind. Actually, brings me on to my last questions about press releases, which is, what do you think of follow-ups? Because we're always a wee bit on the fence about whether or not to follow up. And I think with some cases, it's definitely worth it. Like if we feel like the piece really fits, we will do a follow-up and maybe amend the like messaging a little bit. But do most journals just think, if I said no the first time, or if I didn't see it, it's not that I didn't want, like I didn't see it, I just don't care for it?
Absolutely not. I can't even tell you how many times there's been times where PRs have sent me a press release. For whatever reason it is, I have completely missed it. Maybe I've had too much going on that day, or especially if I'm out on a shoot all day and you're sort of checking emails on your phone, and sometimes things do really slip through. So there have been many instances where PRs have followed up, and I've thought, thank God that you have followed up with this, because this is a story or an interview that I really, really want, and I'm really glad you didn't give it to someone else. I would say with following up, the one thing that I do look out for is you can tell it's really obvious when follow-ups are generic follow-ups, because it'll just say, hi there, just following up on my below email. Could you let me know if it's going to work for you or not? Thanks. They haven't mentioned the brand. They haven't mentioned my name. they haven't mentioned why they think it would work for me. Like maybe it's an angle that I'm not quite sold on, but maybe they think it will. No, they haven't mentioned that. And if I do see a really generic follow-up like that, I will just sort of breeze right past it. But I think follow-ups are good to an extent. You know, don't be ringing people's phones off the hook again unless you think it's something that is like an opportunity they really don't want to miss out on.
Okay, no, that's some really, really good advice. Moving on to like our next topic, which is pitching, and I feel like in a lot of ways we've sort of edged onto it.
Yeah.
But what really stands out then in a press page? So you've got your press release, which would be attached to your email. But the pitch, I feel, is more important than a release because that's, to me, like that's my chance of like really selling this content. So what really stands out to you in pitches? And I think you kind of touched on it on your last answer.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely number one, sounds super simple, but just make sure that you've either addressed it to the right person, you've addressed it at all, because sometimes when it's just like, hi, comma, carries on the email, and you're like, you haven't even tried to come up with like a pronoun or anything there. So make sure that you've got the editor's name. And yeah, I mean, I think similar to what I mentioned earlier, definitely your pitch is all about why do you think this piece of content is going to work for that editor? I even wrote some notes about this, so I'm just looking.
Yes, talk us through it.
now. So yeah, try and find an angle that works for the brand. Again, for Cosmo, I just think it's really obvious. Like the Cosmo brand is so strong. It's so obvious what will work for us and what wouldn't. Mm-hmm. So always try and find an angle that will work for us. Do your research. I mean, have a look on our website. Some people pitch content that, you know, we don't even have any kind of sections under that. If you typed in any of the keywords on our website, nothing comes up along those lines. So there might be, you know, that we clearly don't cover it. There might be a reason for that. Maybe you want to ask what that reason is, which is fine, but don't be just kind of pitching content into a black hole where we don't even cover that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, do your research, see what we're talking about. And also I think there's a lot to be said for kind of timely content as well. Like with pitching, I know you kind of sometimes have to be a bit reactive depending on what's going on. You know, as soon as we went into lockdown, people's pitches were changing from, you know, build your summer wardrobe to build your loungewear wardrobe. So yeah, I think like looking at things like Google Trends and stuff, and actually being quite just being quite kind of methodical about why you would be pitching that as well, like what is trending, because publications, we're only going to be covering what's trending. You know, we're not going to be covering something because you want us to. So yeah, always try and pitch around what our content is that's already there that you know has worked, and what's kind of trending out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So then to kind of put you on the spot a little bit, what is the best pitch you've ever seen? Or is there like a pitch that that grabbed you straight away, or was really weird or really random?
Oh my gosh. I mean,
out of the 300 you get a day.
I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to think if I'm allowed to name drop any brands or anything, but do you know what, the pitches that normally grab me, and I don't know, maybe this says a lot about me more than it does about PRs, but it's when there's something really exclusive about it. Like maybe there's an interview with a celebrity, or maybe it's an interview with someone who doesn't really like doing interviews. People are going very hard on digital at the moment. So, you know, okay, one has sprung to mind now. So did you by any chance watch Love is Blind on Netflix?
I was obsessed, yes.
Who wasn't obsessed? So when Love is Blind came out, it was trending like mad. So we started covering it, and our traffic just went through the roof because everyone was Googling it, everyone was talking about it. And so we continued to cover it, and we had quite a lot of Love is Blind content. And I got an email through one of the contestants' agents. So one of the contestants who was on Love is Blind, their publicist, found my email on Instagram and dropped me an email and said, do you want to do an IGTV video interview? It was with one of the contestants who whose story wasn't shown, but they went through the whole process. And I know, and I was like, what? So we did, and the fact that they gave us IGTV as well. I mean, people are really all over video content as well. So again, if you can offer that extra edge, it's not just like a written interview. If you can offer something that's really interactive like that, that will kind of really help seal the deal. But yeah, that's definitely one of the most random pictures. I just thought, I can't believe you found me on Instagram. You read our content on Cosmo to know that we're covering Love is Blind enough and would be interested in doing an interview with, his name is Wesley. You can all go on Cosmo and read Wesley from Love is Blind interview, and it links to our IGTV video. And the fact that they clearly noticed that video content was something important to us, because they could have pitched, they could have pitched YouTube, they could have pitched print, they could have pitched digital. And yeah, they were really, really accommodating, and it was great.
Okay, that's really awesome. And I mean, especially like Cosmo in the Middle East, because I'm assuming they were based in like West Coast US. So they've really done their research.
So actually, that's a really good point that you just mentioned there, because the time difference is 11 hours. So there's the chances of us being able to do a kind of live interview would have been pretty hard to orchestrate. So the fact that they also kind of picked up on that, and with IGTV, they basically filmed everything, sent us the footage, and we put it together in our own time, because they just knew the time differences wouldn't work. So I think that's another really good tip to look out for. Like, just remember, when you're pitching interviews with your clients, what is the best format, and channel that your interview will work for.
Yeah, no, that is some really, really good advice. And I think as well, the diversification of content, through IGTV, whether it's YouTube or, TikTok now, I think that's really, really key, because anytime we've done that in the past, and just given our clients availability and flexibility to do kind of anything, it's usually worked a lot better than just a kind of written release. Because I think a lot of publishers, I know we work a lot with like Reach in the UK, and they are really being pushed to do way more video, because I think there's a bit more ad revenue from that, and much better engagement. So that's a really, really good point. My kind of final question on pitching is about the best days and time. So at Monumental, anytime we're doing a pitch, and we literally all sit down and try and be that journalist, it's like, okay, maybe she has coffee here, so let's not do like too early. And then maybe, we try and map out this whole woman's life. But is there just some like generic, like, well, don't do it on, I mean, we usually avoid Fridays, so like last day of the week. But is there kind of any generic, like, make sure it's either pre 2 p.m.? Does anything happen religiously in publishing that PR should be aware of?
Do you know what? I've never thought of that before, and that's a really good question. And now you've said it, yes, I would also avoid, so our weekends are different. Our weekends are Friday, Saturday. So I would say avoid a Thursday for the Middle East, because our offices close at 4:30 p.m. on a Thursday. And normally people tend to start clocking off a bit earlier than that anyway. So probably Thursday. Personally, for me, I find Sundays, which is a Monday for you guys, a bit overwhelming, because it's the first day back of the week. You're catching up on everything from the weekend, especially for digital. We're kind of catching up on all the news that's happened. You're planning the week ahead. So I do find it a bit overwhelming Sundays, but that's just personal for me. I would say always avoid press week. So we're on press week now. We're on deadline this week. And I just feel like, God bless anyone that has sent me an email this week, because I have not looked at it. And I will get to it next week after we close. So try and avoid the...
Come in handy.
What did you say?
That's where your follow-ups come in really handy.
Exactly. So anyone can follow up with me next week from Monday onwards. But I would say, most monthlies close at the end of the month. So, I would say try and maybe avoid that last week. And again, I think it's all just personal preferences. I'm a morning person. I'm very, very productive in the morning, and I'll usually kind of save like external meetings and things like that for the afternoon. So catch me in the morning, but that's totally subjective to anyone. Like,
Yeah, to be honest, I can totally relate to that. Like, even looking at the PR guys in our team, the mornings always seem to be really, really busy. And then in the afternoons, it's where there's like, you know, the content creation and stuff like that goes on, the follow-ups. But it does tend to be a pretty morning heavy business, which is weird because usually PRs, you know, we're known to not be very morning people. So there we go. So my final thing, I can see questions coming in, so I will wrap this up shortly. My final thing is around the reporting, and we kind of started talking a wee bit about that the other day. Of course, PRs probably report differently than you know, publishers and titles do. But what's a successful article for you?
So I was thinking about how to answer this, and I think it's really hard because traffic is one of those things that brands like to keep quite close to their chest. So it's not easy to just ping an editor and just go, oh, how many page views did you get on that? You know, they're not going to tell you that. But I think one of the ways to kind of get around that, certainly out here, is I would get the publisher, the brand's media kit, which kind of tells you their average page views, their average unique users, etc., a month. So you kind of know your benchmark. But even then, I mean, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, but how it is in the UK, because we don't give out that kind of information unless it's a commercial article.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for us. We would never get like actual detailed.
That's the same with you.
On the article itself. But we usually just go off, as you say, we get the media kit and just work off averages and percentages from there. A lot of PRs also like to look at the value of the content. So, you know, for example, if you publish an article on Cosmopolitan Middle East, how much would it cost to get that same space of advertising? And then they attribute a media value to their PR. So that's kind of how it works from the PR side. But I was more interested on the, you know, at Cosmo, what do you deem as a successful article? Is it down to page views?
Yeah, so for us, it's page views. It's page views and engagement, really. And again, I think another thing that would be good for PRs to look out for, because the way that we would work is if we publish an article online, if I can see, because I'll have live analytics open at all times, all throughout the day, so I can see what's spiking, when, and why. If we publish an article and it's doing really well, I'll inform all the team and we'll push it out further, you know, 360 across all of our channels. So it will then go up on Instagram. If it makes it on the feed, you know that it's doing really well, or that we really liked that article. Twitter, Facebook, did it go in our newsletter? Have we asked the PR for a follow-up as well? So, you know, maybe like you mentioned TikTok, we're trying to get into TikTok a little bit more. So yeah, maybe there's an article that we think has done really well and we want to follow up with a little fun TikTok video or a YouTube video or another interview. But yeah, I would see how much the editor has also pushed out the article from their side, because if it's not doing well, we'll kind of bury it. We'll just keep posting content on top of it on the homepage until it goes down and we're like, oh, that didn't do well. We're not gonna waste a space on our Instagram feed to push that out further.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. And another question, which I know happens a lot more from the digital PR point of view, is that a lot of brands I've worked with will maybe, so say for example, you publish one of my brands, they will then take that article, put it in a Facebook post, and then promote the post on Facebook as a way to get more traffic onto, you know, more page views onto the article, but essentially then getting people to actually go onto their brand website and buy something. Is that something you guys track?
Wait, can you say that again, just so I know that I've got it right? Because we have, so we're quite dissimilar to the UK and the US in the way that we don't have any kind of anything that you can buy on our website, basically, and that's just because of the region that we're in. So, you know, if, for example, Cosmo UK does the best foundations for summer, they'll have all these kind of little tabs where you can shop those pieces, and they're earning a commission from that as well. So that's kind of, but we can't do that out here. So that's kind of an entirely different beast that we've never tackled out here. But I don't think that's what you asked, but what, can you ask it again?
Yeah, sure. So what a lot of brands I've worked with have done in the past is, so say for example, we're talking about Monumental. And you at Cosmopolitan, the title of the article is, Monumental does X, and you do a whole article on it. I would then take that article, put it in a Facebook post, and then I will promote the post with the article. So it will look to you that you're, getting way more traffic on the article, but it's because I'm paying for it. Is that something that you guys are aware of, or like look to track to, differentiate between organic and paid?
Yeah, definitely. And we always look at, I mean, from an editorial point of view, we obviously always look at organic traffic. But it is still interesting to see what does well paid, because just because you boost something, it doesn't mean it's going to get clicks. You have to have done a good job with targeting and, with the content, the subject lines you've written in there and everything. So we definitely look at both. But I think in terms of kind of the core of the brand, we'll always go off organic traffic. But it's always nice to get some extra paid traffic,
Yeah, because I never know how to look at it. But then if you place it into any other scenario, like someone else paying for traffic to your website, that's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, the best thing is when it's like a massive influencer that does a swipe up and link in bio, and you're like, wow, look at all these organic page views. It's so great.
Right. So should we tackle some of the Q&As? Because I'm conscious there's a couple that have come in. So the first one is from Olga, and she's asking, what would be the best way to follow up on the pictures, and should the no thank you email be responded to?
So you mean if an editor says no thank you, should you respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, I always think it's nice to kind of show that, I know this is going to sound really petty the way that I'm about to say it, but to show there's almost no hard feelings, like for a PR to then come back and be like, no worries at all, next time we'll definitely try and, pitch X, Y, and Z around your feedback, just so you kind of know, you're like, okay, great, they're fine with that. Because I know sometimes the lines get blurred when, it's a brand that advertises a lot, and sometimes they've maybe pitched you a story and you're like, I do want to support you because you support us, but that just doesn't really work. So yeah, it is sometimes nice to receive messages after the no thank you. And what is the best way to follow up? So, well, firstly, like I said earlier, just making sure that your follow up is directed at the editor. And maybe the reason they didn't message you back in the first place is because they just didn't see the email, or maybe it's because they kind of skimmed through it and you haven't quite convinced them. So I would say with your follow-up, maybe highlight the key points again, but also maybe try and add an extra angle, or really try and bring out something in the press release that you think will really work for that brand. And I would definitely say make your follow-up email shorter / smaller than the first email, because again, you're really trying to grab their attention. And if you lost them the first time, you want to make sure the second time you're really, doing everything you can to get their attention in 10 seconds.
Okay, perfect. That's some really good advice. I've got a bit of a fun case study. So one of our clients in Edinburgh is a big tourist attraction. And we had Vanessa Hudgens come into the attraction, and we managed to get a picture of her. And of course, when I get the call as a PR, like, hey, we just had Vanessa Hudgens here, I'm sending you the pictures. I mean, this is like my idea of Christmas, like someone has literally just handed me like this golden nugget. And I went out to like some pretty big press, because I'm like, High School Musical, Vanessa Hudgens, like who would say no? And a lot of journalists came back and were like, yeah, not relevant, she's not big enough. And I'm like, Jesus, if she's not big enough, who is? So is there anything you look for in celebrities to make them relevant?
Well, you know what? That word relevant is just so like, it hits. I'm not even trying to be relevant, and I can feel the pain. Because Instagram, really, not Instagram, but social media in general kind of has this cancel culture. Not that Vanessa Hudgens has been cancelled, but it's kind of like, if they are not literally of the moment celebrities, like right now, yeah, people will pass on it. Celebrity angles in general, though, are always good. If you can find a celebrity hook, a celebrity tie. For us, and again, this is just quite serendipitous that Vanessa Hudgens was on the cover of Cosmo UK recently. I think it was just last year, maybe it was January, but anyway, in the last kind of 12 months for sure. And we always like supporting former cover stars. So I would maybe see, what has Vanessa Hudgens been up to for the past 6 to 12 months? Oh, she was on the cover of Cosmo. And a theme park, I guess, is also quite fun and quite something that Cosmo would probably cover. So maybe you would go to Cosmo, former Cosmo cover star, you know, and you've literally in your subject line, former Cosmo cover star, and that would get my attention immediately. The fact that you've researched that and you've said that, and we would always want to support our cover stars as well. So yeah, celebrity angles are great. Otherwise, I mean, I'm clutching at straws a bit here, but maybe a kind of wider angle you would go is like theme park fashion, for example. And, you know, you'd pitch it to maybe more of like a fashion-y kind of title, maybe your Harper's Bazaars or something like that. And if you had a fashion, well, you don't have a fashion brand, but do you know what I mean? Like you could kind of pitch to something that they might cover and they might use that image.
Okay, so like switching up the angles and can I suppose thinking about the whole thing and more broad.
Yeah, exactly. I think thinking broadly is actually really important, because it you know, I can't imagine that every title would want to cover a theme park, but the amount of people that might want to cover it from fashion, or even if it's not Vanessa Hudgens, that there's lots of angles to be had there. So try your luck.
Okay, good shout. Yeah, because I think when we pitched it out in Scotland, it literally got picked up everywhere. BBC Radio was talking about it. It was on ITV News, like it was everywhere. So I was like, oh, London will love it just as much. Apparently not. Next question is around Twitter. So is Twitter a good way to initially contact editors or journalists, or is email the one and only preferred way?
Twitter is not massive out here. So if I would ask any editor here, I'm pretty sure they would say email. I'm personally a Twitter user and I love it. And Twitter's really big in Arabic, as in like Arabic language. It's a lot bigger than English language in the Middle East. So again, I think it's just kind of about knowing your audience. I wouldn't try and contact a journalist over Twitter, although Twitter is almost like the LinkedIn of Instagram. You know, it's quite a social but professional networking site. So yeah, but again, it's still social media and it's still kind of a bit personal. But so unless someone's engaged with you already, I would try and stick to email. Everything's, you know, trackable over email as well. You can copy people in if you need to. You can't do that on Twitter unless you just start tagging people, you know, left, right, and center.
Yeah, I mean, I do love a bit of a Twitter rant, I'm not going to lie. And I have gotten some good coverage off the back of it, because I'll like, you know, anytime anything happens about small businesses in the UK, I'm like, okay, right, I know the guy at The Independent, I know the guy at BBC, I'm tagging them in, I'm really going to town on it. And it does actually work. And I think, as you said, I think it's maybe more of a region thing. I think the UK is almost like quite individual in that sense. I was speaking to some colleagues in New York, and they're not really Twitter heavy in PR world, whereas in the UK it seems to be the only place really.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I would also say again that like doing your research, if you're trying to pitch something, again, I'm just using this Vanessa Hudgens story because you threw the case study out there, so I'm just going to play with it. But you know, if there was a publication who was maybe really active on Twitter, and say, for example, Vanessa Hudgens was, you could maybe somehow feed that into your pitch. When I was at Harper's Bazaar, we did a gallery roundup. It was just like our best dressed celebs of the week. And we put in a K-pop star, so a Korean pop star, who is super active on Twitter. They have a cult following on Twitter. We had no idea. All they did was like our tweet when we didn't even mean to tag them in it. it just kind of pulled text automatically from our headline, and they clearly saw it in the search bar. They liked it, and the amount of traffic we got from there, it just went absolutely nuts. So if there are brands or celebs that are active on Twitter, and you're also pitching to someone that is active on Twitter, maybe throw that in there.
That's a really good shout, actually.
It works. I mean, we're doing it for TikTok for Cosmo. People pitch specifically with TikTok angles, even if it's not the TikTok PR, whether it's a brand or a celebrity or whatever, because people are so active on TikTok. So why not do that for Twitter?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. And that's something that I think we do quite a bit on when we do like personal PR for like celebrities and stuff. And we kind of outline like, oh, they're really big on here and we could share it on here. And it does get a bit salesy. So I try and like tone it down. But I think, if they're thinking with a marketing hat on, why not?
Yeah.
Got another question around pitches. I think pitches is definitely the hot topic of the day, apart from Vanessa Hudgens. Milli, would you say that a subject line of a pitch is particularly important? Does it dictate whether or not you will open the email?
Defo.
Yeah.
Defo. I mean, yeah. Just yeah. Just yeah. I think your kind of real keywords need to be in there. We love seeing the word exclusive or interview opportunity or something that kind of, I know that what I'm about to open is a really quite a personal opportunity for us. Or I can't remember the example that I gave earlier, former Cosmo cover star Vanessa Hudgens, just something like Vanessa Hudgens is getting a lot of airtime today.
I think we'd be sponsored by like High School Musical by this point.
I know, but just kind of finding those sort of little niche areas that you're like, oh, this is going to get this editor in their sweet spot.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we PRs test out a lot. And, they'll send out the first batch of emails with one subject line, second batch, and then try and like A/B test their way to perfection with the subject line. But I think also, going from what you said, it's quite individual and personal. So that might be quite difficult if you don't do your research on what that specific editor journal is actually about. Final question, and then just a kind of side note. Yes, this is being recorded and it will be on YouTube for anyone that has to run off or join late. I did forget to click record in the middle of the whole Milli's video wasn't loading, so I'm glad you all bared with us. Final question, is there a certain distinguishing factor that will differentiate a pitch from being something you would feature as an editorial piece rather than an advertorial paid piece?
Oh, I don't know if I should answer this, otherwise how will we ever make money? I would say the biggest thing is when PRs ask for too much coverage. Like when they lay out what they're expecting from you coverage wise in exchange for this content or access to this interview, etc. Sometimes I think, okay, well, if you do want an article in print, an article on web, an Instagram post, a newsletter, a swipe up, then you should probably be speaking to our commercial team. But, they should kind of trust in their, whatever they're pitching, that if it's going to do well, if they're pitching something good to the right editor, if it does well for us, we will organically be pushing it out further. But yeah, I would say when something comes to me with, too much of an expectation, I'll go, you've crossed the line there. Here's my sales team.
Right. Okay. That's a really good point. And I think to be on the PR side on this one and kind of back our, fight our corner, a lot of the times we get pushed, we get put under so much pressure from our clients that, for example, we were global lead on this huge account earlier in the year. And my client, although we secured an exclusive on CNN, on BBC, on pretty much the biggest media channels, they still were like, okay, we need to be X, Y, Z. So I think a lot of the time, it's very much the clients that just don't really understand how press works. If I give you an exclusive, doesn't mean that I can give BBC the same exclusive, because then that's not an exclusive. So I think maybe it's more like we need to push back more as PRs about what is actually feasible or not. And, you know, by the sounds of things, it's better to kind of safeguard our name and reputation for journalists, to then be able to have kind of consistent and ongoing coverage, as opposed to just trying to get that one piece.
And I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier, like, for example, if we were to cover something and then Monumental would then take that post and share it in a Facebook post, or, you know, if we do an interview with a brand and then they tag us on Instagram saying, check out our, you know, our interview on Cosmo, we'll always repost that, because that's, you know, we love that they've shared our content as well, so we'll therefore share it back. So I think it does kind of work both ways then, you know, to the kind of, like, as a little tip to kind of get extra coverage, I guess. You know, if you're going to kind of share how we've supported you, we'll then continue to support you back, and they'll just sort of keep going like that.
Yeah, I love that. What a beautiful sentiment to end this on. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so much fun and so insightful. How can people get in touch with you, read what you're writing? Do you want to give us a bit of a links rundown?
Okay, well, they can't get in touch with me over WhatsApp because I ignore them. But I'm very open to, I love hearing from people on email. It's not hard to figure out editors' emails. They're in the masthead of the magazine, and our magazine is free to download online. But you can find us at cosmopolitanme.com. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're launching an Arabic chat series very soon, so if by any chance you speak Arabic, you should head over there and subscribe to Cosmo Middle East now. But yeah, Cosmo Middle East is where it's at, guys, and there's links to all of the teams' Instagrams as well, which I always think is really nice, because if you're following a journalist, maybe because you really like what they believe in, maybe it's sustainability, or maybe it's you know, feminism, then you can follow their kind of career personally on their own Instagram. But can head over to Cosmo in the meantime.
Yeah, Cosmo ME is where it's at. Well, thank you so much again. I know that for you it's like 10 p.m. right now.
9 p.m. That's why my ring light is like, because it's actually pitch black outside. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much again. Really appreciated this. And for everyone watching, we're going to send out an email in the coming days with the video. But yeah, head over to Cosmo Middle East and have a read. Thanks again, Millie. Catch up with you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.